Our next speaker is Mr. Theagarajah, who will speak on IT in the banking sector, and we all know him as he has been 34 years in the banking sector and most recently managing director and CEO at Cargills Bank. Please go ahead, and I think we'd be grateful if you can have a shorten your talk a little bit so we can move ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Renwa. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to slightly deviate from the stated topic of IT and banking, but I think banking is very much cluttered and literally everyone knows about banking. But I want to slightly deviate and speak a bit about digitalization in banking and financial services, because I think that probably will open a few eyes for those who are not connected with the industry on where it is and the opportunities for you to also plug into that ecosystem. Because banking and finance is probably the last of what we call the protected bastion, not only in Sri Lanka, it is world over. And in Sri Lanka, this ecosystem is dominated by the licensed banks and the non-bank financial institutions, which are regulated by the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. So it's a very highly regulated industry. Then you have the capital market, which is unfortunately not as developed as some of our neighbors, regional neighbors, but the stock brokering, the investment banking, the wealth management and mutual fund industry, which is just coming up, is regulated by the Securities and Exchange Commission and the Stock Exchange. But that's still very nascent. The fact is that today, from an IFC report, literally 74-75% of Sri Lanka's population is connected with the banking system, with a basic bank account. But sadly, less than 30% of the adult population has a formal savings account with a bank or an NBFI, and less than 17% of the adulthood has a a borrowing relationship with a regulated institution. So that gives you the upside of what we are missing. Financial inclusion is still below the radar with moneylenders and the informal sector. And I think there are a few reasons for that, which also brings in the need for technology and connectivity. Probably one of the biggest issues which we have had in the past is this whole issue about documentation, connectivity, and also getting into convenience of making payments is very, very important. So I'll just take one by one each element and give you an update. While we have a perception today that with 20 million handphones, Sri Lanka is wired, having done almost 4 decades of banking in this industry, I can tell you the bulk of business still goes through cash, whether we like it or don't like it. And one of the things which are not helping you and me to monetize or demonetize is the fact that the common man doesn't want to pay income tax. So there has to be a very clear policy advocacy, try to align the taxation system of the country in a manner which will make the small timer want to engage into the formal digital banking and financial system where he's not harassed, and what he eventually pays, he pays and goes off. So that's a very important policy issue which we have to get into. The second thing is, whether we like it or don't like it, checks are still in vogue. Where rest of the world, in markets like Australia, Canada, where some of you are dialing in from Norway, I think checks are extinct. But the fact is, it is still here, including the peninsula. Unfortunately, it is still there. And the sad part is, if I look at pre-2009 or pre-2000 and today, there was a time when you say the northerner writes a check, that check is as good as gold. But sadly, I can tell you, having run 3 banks and push the growth of one particular bank to open 25 branches in 2 years, I can tell you one of the biggest problems I faced was the quality of a check written after 2009. And today the bazaar in the province in the north, in Bavania and Jaffna, is really suffering the effects. Credit growth is not taking place because of the lack of faith in the system. So again, that is where there is an opportunity to get into demonetization. And there are a few things which have happened. The central bank has played a very aggressive lead role in trying to bring in, for small payments, small time payments, connectivity 7 days, not just 5 days. You have a new tool called CEFS, CEFTS, the Common Electronic Fund Transfer System in between banks and you and me, where regardless of POYA, Saturday, Sunday, money can be transferred from A to B. But I'm still not sure as to how aware is the general public in the province and the peninsula of this. And the best example we saw of this working, and I was a recipient, I was running a bank at that time, between the 1st of March and 15th of April, Sinhala Tamil New Year, when COVID phase 1 broke in, the aggregated volume of money which went through CEFs ballooned as high as 450% against pre-December 2019. That gave you an idea as to how the consumer, you and me, forgot all other fears when it came to a necessity, how they adapted on small ticket. So that the tools are there, but it's a question of how do you engage. The next issue is, because this is a protected industry, all and sundry can't just come in and play. And you see these banks, and I have to say I've been part of this ecosystem for 40 years. The banks are not the most savviest and in the forefront of adopting technology, because they are running huge balance sheets and are very focused on credit as a primary focus as opposed to technology adoption. And this is where guys like you who are in the IT sector, be it startup, be it mature integration, there is opportunity to plug into this system. But the way one gets into, unlike hotels or any other sector, is there is a ring-fenced way of getting into this banking and financial system by testing your products. There is something called a regulatory sandbox, SANDBOX, sandbox. The Central Bank of Sri Lanka laid out the regulatory sandbox framework in February this year, which effectively allows any of you guys, whether you're in a startup or a mature IT industry, whether you're in Sri Lanka or in any part of the world, to plug and play into the state-of-the-art technology development. But there is a precondition, because it's a question of trust and public faith. Being deposit-taking institutions, you have to partner and come with a licensed commercial bank. Say, for example, if Mano wants to roll out something new in terms of contact tracing into banking, with all due respect, he can't come directly. He will have to come through HNB or commercial law bank, so that trust, the trust element, the regulation is taking place with banks. So this IT guys have to work in partnership with that, and there is no harm in doing that. Quite a few people are doing that, and I'll give you a very brief taste of some of the new things which are taking place, which are very good for the country's development. One of the things which we have been grappling for at least the 5 or 6 years, and I'm sure Mano is one of those guys with Sanjeev Veeravarana and them, from the 2015 era, have been harping for, was this electronic KYC or EID. And we went through a whole series of arguments and counter-arguments over the previous 5 years and ended up nowhere. But at least now, thank God, I think ICTA, where Mano is a member of, I think he's under the President's office, has taken some serious initiatives to kickstart ICTA, the EID system, which will be your Sri Lankan equivalent of your Aadhaar, and probably, Manu might be able to tell you, but I think probably sooner than later it will get connected. And the good sign of that is, as a preamble to the EID, we just announced, the Central Bank and the Ministry of Defense announced about 2 weeks ago, the online registration ability of any of you or any of us in banking to be able to test the authenticity of a national identity card number by dialing or logging in online with the Register of Persons. And that validation is sort of supervised by the Ministry of Defense, and you pay as a subscription for the service. So that's the first line, which cuts through a whole heap of manual processing in getting into engagement of customers. So I think that's a very good thing which has been developed also with a couple of IT companies. Then also there are quite a few...
Can we sort of fairly wrap up fairly soon if possible? Or?
Okay, just a couple of things. The other important thing to notice in Sri Lanka, from a Theagarajah to Odell, to make payments, to make it as simple as possible, we are just about lucky to benefit now from this thing called the National QR Code. The QR code, whether it's a sticker for a Theagarajah or whether it's on a smartphone as a dynamic QR code, that technology has been rolled out in the last couple of months. So it's up to us now to engage into anything which we want to do using QR. And in conclusion, I would like to say the 2 or 3 areas which are there for you guys, we don't have to worry about exporting. I mean, even within the local market, try to find out a bit more about the national payments roadmap. It will give you a very clear idea as to where the government is taking the payments roadmap in the next 3 to 4 years. And we don't have to bring in an Oracle or a SAP to come in here. Every one of you can plug into that space. And the other area which I think still, which is becoming a huge problem in this country, which is cybersecurity. And in our space, there is a lot of opportunity for you guys to plug in. And of course, the final comment, the final comment I'll make is the banks are the largest custodians and repositories for data, unmined data, gold which is unmined. And to do that, one needs analytics and one needs data science. And I think you guys are plumb in that opportunity, that space where you can connect with this industry which has not yet harvested that unmined gold. So here is an opportunity for you guys. And with those comments, let me wrap up my thoughts.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Theagarajah, for telling us about the opportunities in that sector and also encouraging those who are watching to actually move into it or think about what they can do to go ahead.